Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is on his way to Washington, D.C., where he will deliver a landmark speech to the United States Congress. Ahead of the trip, Netanyahu thanked Biden for his contribution to U.S.-Israel relations, following the president's decision to end his re-election campaign. And he also said Israel will be the United States' strongest ally in the Middle East, regardless of who is elected in November. Let's get more on this from DW's correspondent, Aya Ibrahim in Jerusalem. Aya, what more do we know about Netanyahu's visit to the United States?
Well, this was a visit that was obviously planned well before U.S. President Biden's announcement to end his bid for a second term in office. It also comes after a time of really frosty relations between Netanyahu and Biden over Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza, and more specifically, Israel's incursion on Rafah, which the United States had been quite critical of after, sort of more or less unconditionally supporting Israel following the attacks of October 7th. And now we're seeing Netanyahu strike a more unified tone given Biden's announcement. Netanyahu is expected to address Congress, and there was a lot of speculation that that speech would try to play up his perceived lack of support from Biden, but we're now hearing that that speech to Congress is likely to strike another, more of what we've heard today, more emphasis on the unity and everything that Biden has done for Israel. At the same time, this comes at a kind of more or less a low point for Netanyahu's popularity, the war in its ninth month now, and with hostages still being held in Gaza. We even saw protesters at the airport here in Israel as the Prime Minister was leaving, calling on him to try and find another deal that would bring back the remaining hostages and end the war in Gaza.
So considering all those factors, just briefly, if you could, Aya, could you broaden this out and tell us where this leaves U.S. and Israeli relations?
I don't think this is likely to have a huge effect on Israeli-American relations. Look, even though there have been critical statements coming from Washington towards the Netanyahu administration and the conduct of the war, the United States still remains Israel's biggest ally, and not just when it comes to providing weapons that have, of course, contributed to the war in Gaza, but also providing diplomatic cover for Israel in international forums like the United Nations Security Council. And so even though there are disagreements, I don't think this really marks a huge departure from the ironclad American support for Israel and, to a very large extent, the war.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is our correspondent, Aya Ibrahim in Jerusalem.